Hey guys, Bella here. This video is about how to cope with travel anxiety. Everyone has travel anxiety, but some people who have generalized anxiety in their everyday life probably have a little bit more travel anxiety than normal. I, for one, definitely have a high level of anxiety at any given time, and especially when traveling. And since I have just driven across the country nearly 1,800 miles, I feel slightly qualified to talk about this subject and how I've dealt with it over the past couple of days, especially traveling alone, because it's not easy to be in your head the entire time, and I've been driving about 7 hours a day, so it has been a little bit mentally taxing. I'm going to go over a couple of tips that I have for combating travel anxiety. So number one, and probably the most important, is to plan ahead. If you can see the way that your trip is going to go way ahead of time, you can kind of visualize it and feel more comfortable about it in general, especially if you know where you're going to stay and that the trip is already paid for. I cannot stress enough how good it is to pay for things in advance. If I'm going to go on a big trip, like say to New Orleans for a week, I really want to pay for that several months before, because the sting of paying for it will be long gone and you can enjoy the trip and you don't have to think about how much money you're spending while you're there. So plan ahead and know where you're going to stay. And as well as with the money thing, you need to have a budget for how much you plan to spend each day, because if you don't have enough money to travel, you really have no business traveling, because you're going to stress yourself out and you're going to put yourself in a situation where it's not ideal for even having a remotely good time. So number two is coping with isolation, especially if you're driving alone like I was. There were some parts on the road where I started to get really freaked out because there was actually an 80-mile stretch where I didn't see anything, and it was terrifying. Like, your head just goes to all the worst things that could possibly happen. So for that, one thing I will do is I will make phone calls. I will call my family. I'll call everybody that I need to check on. Like, just make a game out of it. Just see how many people in your family you can call, and I guarantee you they will be happy to talk to you. I would talk to my mom for like an hour a day. I'd talk to my grandma. I'd talk to my friends, and that really helped not only pass the time, but also make me feel a little bit more connected to home in general. And just those familiar voices really help. And another thing with isolation is you can listen to podcasts, and it really helps if you listen to podcasts that you normally listen to at home. Like for me, that's Bill Burr and Tim Ferriss. And I know it sounds weird, but like just to have that familiar voice in the car with you can really like set you at a base level of feeling good and feeling comfortable driving. Especially like Bill Burr and Tim Ferriss's podcasts are all usually at least an hour long. So that really passed some time in the car for me. So dealing with isolation, just kind of talking yourself down and say, I'm okay, it's going to be fine, if you start freaking out. So the third tip I would say is journal. Either journal in the morning before you leave or journal in the evening, or do both. And one thing that I really like is the worst case scenario exercise. So if you're like really fixated on something, like, okay, say I'm fixated on running out of gas and I've been worrying about that this whole entire trip, then I would make a journal entry that would say, what do you think is the worst thing that's going to happen if you run out of gas? And just work through it in your mind. I mean, honestly, what do you really think is going to happen? Like, worst case scenario, you're going to have to walk for a little while, or you're going to have to get a ride from a stranger. It's not going to be some horrible experience that you go through. And if anything, you're going to realize that running out of gas is not that big of a deal. Also, another tip for that, always get gas whenever you see a gas station. Doesn't even matter if you have 3/4 of a tank, just get gas. Like, I promise you, because being out here driving this far, I've realized that it is very easy to get low on gas quickly. So with the journal thing, going back to that, I would recommend that you also, on top of worst case scenario exercise, you do some sort of gratitude exercise at least once a day. For me, my gratitude exercise is, what do I want to get out of today? What's the end result, or what do I want to happen? And I do this for everything in my life that I'm going to do. Like when I was going to go hike the Appalachian Trail, I was like, okay, what do you want out of this? What are you hoping for? Why are you doing this? Because if you don't know why you're doing something, you really shouldn't be doing it. So even just for your day, like, what do you want out of today? Like, do you want to see a national monument? Do you want to make talk to somebody who's not from your state, whatever. And in the evening, I also write down like what were the highlights of my day. That way I can not only remember it, but also like just give thanks for the good things that happened. And someone also said, like, you can't be fearful and grateful at the same time. I think it was Tony Robbins who said that. Like, if you're doing your gratitude every day, you're not going to be living in fear. You're going to be living in a state of gratitude rather than out of fear. So number 4, it's sort of a catch-all for like medication, but I would say any kind of thing that helps you get through your anxiety. So for a lot of people, that's a medication that they only take when they can feel an anxiety attack coming on. For some people, that's a pill that they have to take every single day. I myself have been prescribed both at any given time, and I'm not on any medication now, but I think that it's very important if you want to travel that you get some help if you need it, because there's nothing wrong with taking medication. And on top of medication, essential oils are really good for calming your nerves. Like lavender is super calming essential oil, so you could just rub some of that on before you got in the car or in the morning to kind of start the good vibe feeling of your day. And another thing is to remind yourself that you're safe, you're where you're supposed to be, like everything is good, all is well with the universe. So like maybe create some kind of a mantra in your head that you can say if you start to freak out, because I really think that those kind of affirmations really help us out. Like one of my favorite affirmations ever is just 3 words: I am enough. You know, and when you're feeling like really bad about yourself, or you're feeling like you're not making enough progress, you can just say, I'm enough. I am enough. And so on the road, my affirmation is really just, I am safe, I am where I am supposed to be, because that's my biggest fear, is not being safe and not going in the right direction. So number 5 is don't be in a hurry. You will miss all the good parts of your trip if you try to rush through it, and rush is often a feeling associated with anxiety. Like, why do you remember being so stressed out on all your family trips? Like, for me, that was because my parents were always freaking out. Like, we have to go here, we have to go there, we have to be here at 12 o'clock, we can't stay here past 2 o'clock because we have to be here at 4 o'clock. Like, they seriously ruined every single trip by trying to plan and micromanage every hour of the day. Yeah, don't do that. I've had much better trips since I've gotten older and taken myself on trips, because I realize if you're open to opportunity, you can really have a much better trip, because you might not know what's out there. Like, I didn't know about Falls Park the other day until like the day before, and then I like structured the next day around Falls Park. So I would say give yourself a large buffer of time to figure out what you want to do, and be open to changing the plan for the day, because if you're not open to change, you will definitely have some anxiety attacks when plans mess up, because plans are going to mess up. That's just how plans work. So hopefully these little tips have helped you with working through some of your travel anxiety. I know it can be really difficult traveling with anxiety, but honestly guys, this trip has been awesome for me. Even though there was parts of it where I was like freaking out and feeling like I didn't know what I was doing, it's really good to realize I am fine. Like, that's ridiculous, that's totally illogical, like, and work through that. So if you have any tips to combat anxiety when you're traveling, feel free to leave them in the comment section. I would love to hear how you guys deal with that. Thanks for watching.